welcome to SVGTV's news for Tuesday, August the 25th, 2020. I am Bhavin Olver with the details. Government is not yet ready to give up on the SVG Geothermal project. Director of the project, Ellsworth Dakin, said they are still hoping the project can realize its objective of providing cheaper electricity costs to Vincentians on a sustainable basis. The 3 wells dug on the slopes of the La Soufrière volcano for geothermal energy has failed to produce the required permeability. And over the last few days, the Odin drill used to dig the wells were being transported to the Kingston port to be shipped off to Spain in the coming week. However, on a radio program on Sunday, the project director said with data now available, they are exploring 3 options with 3 different developers to realize the project's full potential.
The temperature is 250 degrees Celsius. So what you have is a heat transfer. Right. Okay, and you have a closed loop, you have a benign fluid, and you have a series of loops. That's one company. Another company suggesting, listen, they have some patent over some optical sensing device that can sense where the permeable areas would be. And they are bringing the capital as developers. They have indicated to us that they have the capital to take it forward. And there's another company who said, listen, we are specializing in well stimulation, that we can stimulate this enough in a method that is safe to enhance and increase the flow of the fluid.
They can explain that the option that could be more economically viable would be trapping energy from rocks beneath, which, once successful, could still see a power plant being built.
And you're actually doing a heat transfer using the heat from the rock. So you have just in the same way that you have the radiator heat, as in it takes the heat from the rock, transfer it elsewhere. So it's a heat transfer using loops. So what they will have to do, they will have to drill horizontal wells. So they will have to connect the wells that we have already dug underground, connect it underground, and then create a loop. So it will require horizontal drilling. So it is quite costly.
Dakin said that the Odin rig was demolished since March 16th, as it was costing the government $43,000 per day to have it in operation. He also made it clear that the government doesn't owe monies to any financial institution in relation to the project, as it was only grant monies used for the drilling exercise. Meanwhile, environmental specialist Dr. Renald Murray said that the compensation was paid out to all involved in the project.
So we were not always able to meet the deadlines, but in every case, persons were compensated and settled at the end of this phase of the project where it is. There is no outstanding financial or social impact from anyone. In terms of health and safety, no member of the public away from the work site was impacted in any way. There were a few impacts on the project site itself, a few mishaps on the project site, but of course the project had its own health and safety internal concerns, and so where there were a few violations, I think there was one case of a person being hospitalized from on-the-job issue. Now, on the site was not much of my concern because there were internal little controls, but I see the records and I know that there was one person who was hospitalized. The others were just mishaps or near miss that were dealt with. And so we had no deaths, no critical accidents coming out of the project, no loss of livelihood, no loss of income or anything from anyone. There were some delays, but everyone was satisfied at the end of the day that they had been taken care of.
And Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves says he does not see the geothermal project as a failure, but a setback. Calling in to make a contribution to the discussion on the project on radio on Sunday, PM Gonsalves said since the required permeability was not found, his government will now use the project as it is in its advanced stage to continue work at the project site.
And accept for those who say it has been a failure. It is a setback in respect that we did not find the permeability which was being hoped for, and we could not know that unless we drill with the big boreholes, which would have taken us to industrial level production had the permeability been there. And there are other technologies which are now being examined as to how you can turn the resource which we know to be there with the heat up to 250 degrees Celsius to see whether it is possible. And then the decision will have to be made in economic terms, Joseph. as to whether it is competitive with other forms of alternative energy, with that technology being used. And of course, as Deacon says, with the security involved for the provider of INLEC. And all those are questions which would have to be determined, but you don't close your mind to these things.
The Prime Minister said there are several renewable energy options in SVG, with solar energy being one of them. However, the country has not yet reached a stage where solar energy can be fully utilized.
Unless you get the storage for the battery. If you have an installed capacity, even at the 13 parallel, you will get 20% of installed capacity. And that is why geothermal is so much an advance over solar, unless you have the battery technology down pat. It doesn't provide for you to do the base load for electricity, because it is only 20% of the installed capacity that you get. And there are some days you're gonna have cloud cover, and of course you have nights unless you can store it. And I know that the technology is improving for the storage, but it is not there yet. We may get there, and I'm hoping that we get there because we have abundant sunlight.
Addressing the issue of location for drilling, PM Gonzalez said that some persons felt that the leeward end was a better option to drill. However, he said it would have cost $20 million more, with no evidence to produce to financial institutions to fund the project. Acting head of the energy unit with the Caribbean Development Bank, Joseph Williams, agrees that there's no other location was suitable for drilling but on the windward side of the island.
Whatever decision was made about how we go forward, where the drilling was done, had to be based on the evidence that were provided and a layer of consultants' reviews and opinions. The bank does not take lightly the management of its own resources, which are based on its subscription and market resources. It doesn't take lightly the stewardship that it has to manage the resources of its partners. So I just want to dispel any notion that there could be any other consideration that is outside of the due diligence process of the bank. The bank is in this process for years, decades. I mentioned we are in our 50th year. So when it comes to investment projects, we have a wealth of experience. But not only that, for geothermal, we put on board different layers, bringing in experience from partners in addition to consultants.
A small group of residents from Choppins today picketed the Land and Surveys Department, claiming that surveyors approve public lands to be used for private property, denying residents vehicular access to several communities. The residents said a footpath was built in the area, which is a narrower version of the road that previously existed, and that they have been engaged in picketing action for the authorities to set in and address the matter.
In February 2020, the land was sold earlier, but the buyer had decided to construct buildings on the land. Well, the road actually run through lands that buyer buy, and it was discovered that the owner of Harmony Hall Estate, that portion of land, who had sold, when the guy started building, he had blocked us access and provided a concrete footpath with some step fronts. Mind you, vehicles used to drive through that area. Actually, that road was shifted in 1995. They used to be coming from a different direction on the same estate, right? And the landowner, right, had shifted that road behind an old sugar road. And she didn't actually fix it back, like put back quarries, press it so that vehicle could pass the water, eat it out over time. But when it was dry, vehicles used to still come up there. But
one of the residents said they have raised the issue with the authorities, including the chief surveyor, and noting that nothing has been done.
The area was resurveyed, and that portion of the road was actually cut out. Okay? So when I spoke to the surveyor who had done the job, privately in 2009, which is the chief surveyor now. I spoke to him on April 1st, 2002. He told me that, again, the road was resurveyed, notice was issued. No one in the area never got notice. And the outcome now that we had lose a portion of the road, that is what stands. Can't happen.
The concerned residents said they would like to have their issues resolved as they feel their rights have been violated.
As chairman of CARICOM, with the Guyana debacle, he talked about the people in Guyana rights and they should stand up for their rights. So we are standing up for our rights in St. Vincent too, and we hope the Prime Minister is listening, we hope the opposition is listening, and so too we hope Parliament is listening.
In a case of emergency, no fire engine, no ambulance can, well, mainly the fire trucks, they will not be able to access that part of Choppins. It is totally wrong because the other roads, there are two other roads, and the fire trucks are not able to go up to them. And of course, when you have people building their homes, the trucks are not able to drive through the other roads. So what is provided, what is taken away from them, it is not right. You know, it is a handicap to the people of Choppins. And of course, we are talking about the senior citizens as well. But because those people are not able to use those steps, the treaders are very, very high and it is steep. And we are calling on the representative of East St. George to address this matter immediately.
I went there to live in 1993, and that was the only road I could have used to get materials, to where I'm living, to build my house. And then I just see the road disappear like that. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, since I was 4 or 5 years old, when the government truck was bringing up the car race to try and spread on the road. I was a small little boy. I used to run and hap those trucks.
Our news team visited the Lands and Surveys Department today to get someone in authority to comment on the matter. However, they were told the Chief Surveyor, Keith Francis, is on leave and he is the only person authorized to speak on the issue. Meanwhile, the opposition New Democratic Party, the NDP, has already confirmed its 15 candidates, with only one to be ratified, the candidate for North Windward, who will be contesting the upcoming general elections on the NDP ticket. Party leader Dr. Godwin Friday told SVG-TV News that the candidate for North Windward is a woman, who along with the other candidates will be formally introduced at a launch to be announced soon.
The North Windward candidate is still to be ratified, and we will do that hopefully this week. But we have a candidate who's been working on the ground for several weeks now, her name is Chevron John, and so for months now she's been there, and so we will have that done. That's pretty much the final act in getting all of our candidates completely ratified and going forward. Launch our candidates in the most effective way possible. And I know that the candidates are raring and ready to go in terms of the formal launch of the campaign. As you know, we've been campaigning for some time now. We started the virtual meetings, others are catching up to try and do it now. And we will continue to lead in that regard. And when we do the launch formally for the campaign, you'll see it'll be something that the people of this country will be really very happy with.
Dr. Friday said that they have been campaigning for the past month, and one of the main aspects of their campaign is meeting one-on-one with the people, which has been fruitful.
I've been doing this since, forever, long before an election was scheduled. I've been going around and talking to people all over the country because I believe if you want to represent people, you have to find out from them what they want you to represent them about. It's the same principle I apply in America. It's that you have to talk to people to find out what's on their minds. I've been doing this since I become leader of the party. I did it in my constituency when I was just a candidate for that constituency alone. And when we go about, people they're yearning for change. They're saying things are not working in the country. And I said, well, the change, you are the one who can make the change. And they have to believe that this is their opportunity to do so. And the feedback I'm getting is extremely positive with respect to that.
Vincentians are being urged to take extra precautions against dengue fever, which is said to be on the increase in the country. Dengue fever is a viral disease transmitted to humans by the Aedes aegypti mosquito. Infectious disease specialist Dr. Josie Davey is advising persons to engage in proper hygienic practices, use of insect repellents, and keep their environment clean to protect themselves from the disease, which symptoms that can be mild to severe.
Mild disease would be just the fevers, the headache, and the headache is usually with a pain behind the eyes. You may feel achy, and you go like, oh, just a little flu that I'm having. So that's the mild dengue. But things get worse when you start having abdominal pain, you vomit, there may be some confusion, and what we call lethargy, as in you're just lethargic, you're just limp, not much energy. So some of that, those are the symptoms, the warning signs. Severe dengue is when you're going into what we call hypovolemic shock, and this is where your blood volume is depleted, so you don't have enough blood circulating around, and the body, that's the organs would shut down. So that's when you have severe dengue, and you would need care in the intensive care unit with proper hydration and probably blood transfusions to survive severe dengue.
Dr. Davis said during the hurricane season there can be a lot of rain, provided a habitat for the mosquito to breed and transmit the disease. She said to prevent an outbreak of the disease, persons are advised to do their part to reduce breeding of the mosquito around their immediate environment.
Especially in our rainy season when that water collects, and that's why persons should not leave their empty containers up so that the water is there. These mosquitoes, they don't need a lot of water to breed. So in small containers, in unsealed septic tanks, it's hanging around, in your guttering around the house, that water is there. So you should pay special attention to those areas and ensure that they're nice and dry and not giving any space for mosquitoes. In terms of personal protection, perhaps parents can give their students or their children a repellent, so bug spray as we call it. But we're not talking about the one for the mosquitoes. You can kill those in your homes, but for the children, you'd use the repellent on their skins. And for elderly as well. Well, everyone should wear repellent in this season. And also, you should wear longer clothing if you're going out, especially to the mountain regions. You wear long pants, long sleeves, and you know there are lots of mosquitoes there, so you're properly covered. Bed nets, you can have bed nets over the beds to protect you. Perhaps closing the doors, you know, before that mosquito wants to enter. If you see them, you try to get rid of them before time. Yeah.
The infectious disease specialist also spoke on what is being done by the authorities to keep the Aedes aegypti mosquito under control, and shared some advice with persons who may be exhibiting symptoms of dengue fever.
Already being done, as in fogging in the areas where there are lots of cases of dengue fever. Fogging is being performed, and for those who don't know what fogging is insecticide, and it's generated through the air. So when you hear them coming, please do not close your windows, because the fog needs to get in to kill the adult mosquito and to prevent breeding of further mosquitoes. The reason why, of course, we prefer persons to go to the doctor is so that that suspicion is known, because for most of the other viral illnesses, you'd survive with no problem. But dengue can go from 0 to 100 in literally 24 hours, meaning that you can be fine, nice and talking to me, and then next day you're literally bleeding on the inside and dying. So if you're experiencing these symptoms of the high fevers, headache, especially now that we have an outbreak and increasing cases, you should go to the doctor. Persons should avoid taking paracetamol, Advil, which is the same thing, Voltaren, drugs of that class, the non-steroidal analgesic drugs. They should take paracetamol only until they can have the advice of a healthcare provider.
The Ministry of Health, Wellness and Environment is said to be working assiduously for the smooth reopening of schools on Monday, August the 31st, 2020, amidst the threat of COVID-19. Shanika John, a representative of the ministry, was on NBC Radio this morning discussing preparations for the reopening of schools and some of the recommendations made by teachers and parents to protect the nation's children against COVID-19. Highlighting some of the work being done by the ministry, John said the COVID-19 response unit has been working since February and has identified all the schools in the 9 health districts with medical personnel developing strategies to respond accordingly. Testing is key in the fight against this pandemic, and according to John, rapid test services are available for teachers wishing to be screened.
Also offering testing for our teachers as well. For those teachers who are interested in being screened for COVID-19, we are offering what is called the rapid testing as the first initial phase. And then if we do detect any sort of exposure to COVID-19, we move to PCR testing. And this is something that we have been doing in country generally. We've tested, for example, the Football Federation, they wanted to restart their games. We've tested all their players, and we have not picked up any case of COVID-19. And these are people who are just interacting their everyday life, they're going about their normal, and this is not the only group. So we have been doing this screening, and we will continue to do it. So for the teachers who are interested or who have concern, that service is available. Let your principal know, and then we would liaise with principals directly to get the names to start that process as well.
Okay, would that be done in the school itself or at the school, or they would have to go to a separate location?
Well, we are working out the logistics as it relates to whether or not it can be done within the school setting, or we will move to a different. But at first, we need to at least have the numbers to make that sort of decision.
All right, so what we'll do here,
The wearing of masks is another method which can be used to prevent the spread of the virus. John said it is recommended that students wear masks en route to school.
So we recommend that if you're taking the temperature, we have given specific instructions. It has to be about 100.1 Fahrenheit and up, and about 36 Celsius and up. If you get a reading within those specific range, we ask that you stay where you are. If you're home, stay where you are and call the COVID-19 hotline, or call your nearest health center. And I think we have shared those numbers over and over. If the child is at school, we ask the staff and the teachers to allocate a room or a space where the child can stay until the health can respond. We've identified our COVID-19 health response teams. These are in place throughout St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and various health centers, polyclinic, health nursing supervisors, FMPs are within various districts across St. Vincent and the Grenadines in order for them to respond.
all right, we want to remind persons that
Regular temperature checks at schools is one recommendation made to help reduce the spread of the virus. John said parents too can take their child's temperature before they get to school.
For the Ministry of Health, we recommended to the Ministry of Education that students should wear masks en route. The schools are now going to have to reinforce and ask parents to comply. Ideally, we recommend that a child should have at about 2 masks per day, one for in the morning en route, and then change it for afternoon. And this is part of the reason why we have not recommended it during school hours as well, because we don't want the contamination is what we're most concerned about. Persons wearing it above their head, under their chin, children resting it down to play, or children even swapping their masks because one looks cooler than the other. So all of that taken into context, we have recommended that. So 2 masks per day, washable, reusable, that they could wash by the end of the day, air dry, and then allow the child to wear it back for the next day.
At a recent press conference, President of the SVG Teachers Union, Oswald Robinson, said they expect the government to employ trained persons to conduct temperature checks on students upon arrival at schools, noting that the teachers are not health professionals. Meanwhile, visits to the inmates at Her Majesty's Prison will resume on Monday, August the 31st. The advisory was issued by the Superintendent of Prisons, who stated that to prevent the spread of COVID-19, a number of protocols have been established which visitors must adhere to. All visitors are asked to wear a mask upon entry into the prison compound and to use the wash and sanitizing facility at the prison entrance before entry. The protocols further outline that no more than 6 persons would be allowed to sit in waiting area prior to visiting, and only 1 person would be allowed to visit an inmate at any given time. It has been further stipulated that inmates should be allowed 1 visit per week, which will be arranged through appointments only, and each visit will last no more than 10 minutes.